Now let's take a look at new automation functions that are built into Camera Raw. And I have to tell you, those of you who use Camera Raw are going to be delighted by this. Photoshop CS2 and the Bridge, both of them independently allow you to batch process Camera Raw images. I'm going to go to the Bridge so that we can actually see this at work. I'll click on this little folder icon on the right side of the options bar there. And I'm going to switch to this folder right here that contains a bunch of different raw images of our DJ. And notice that they're all looking pretty darn dark. These images were shot under low light, but it turns out we can correct them. Of course, as those of us who know Camera Raw, you know that you can bring out all sorts of detail inside of an ultra light or an ultra dark photo. What I'm going to do, these are all CRW images. I'm going to go ahead and select all of these images, and I'm going to right-click on any one of them. So instead of choosing Open, which would go ahead and open these images inside the Camera Raw dialog box inside Photoshop, I'm going to go ahead and choose Open in Camera Raw, which will open the Camera Raw dialog box directly inside the Bridge. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this command. We'll see the Camera Raw dialog box up on screen, and notice what I now have running down the left-hand side of this screen is a scrolling list of all of the images that I might want to process inside the Camera Raw dialog box. Now, right now, the very first image is selected. I want to draw your attention to the right-hand side of the screen here. And notice that we have the exact same white balance controls, exposure, shadow, brightness, all those same controls that we had in previous versions of Camera Raw. But we also have these auto checkboxes here, which tell Photoshop to make its best guess as to how these various options should be set. So if I turn on auto for exposure, it's going to dramatically brighten up this image. And it's going to give us better shadows, actually lighter shadows. If I turn on shadows, brightness is going to calm down a little bit. Contrast is going to go down as well, just slightly when I turn on these checkboxes. It's worth noting that these checkboxes are turned on by default, which means Photoshop CS2 is automatically doing a better job of processing your Camera Raw images than was its predecessor. So beautiful thing. These images would have inside Photoshop CS1 looked very dark. Now automatically inside of Photoshop CS2, they will look brighter and better. Now I might adjust a few more settings at this point. I'll go ahead and warm up the temperature a little bit. I could even take advantage, notice up here, there's this little white balance tool. I could go ahead and click on that tool in order to select it. And then I could click someplace in the background to lift a neutral color to say this is a neutral color, a neutral gray inside the image. Can modify the tint, what have you. I'm also going to go ahead and crop the image somewhat. So I'm going to go ahead and get my crop tool. I'm going to set my crop tool to crop to a 5:7 ratio here. And I'm going to drag around a portion of the image that I want to select. And notice that it switches back and forth between a vertical orientation and a horizontal orientation, depending on the size of your drag. So I'll go ahead and move that into a decent position, maybe drag it down just a little bit. I want to leave it wide enough so that it can accommodate all the photos. Now I've pretty well fixed one of the photographs here. At least I'm happy with it. What about the other ones? How do I go about fixing them as well? They were all shot under the same lights inside the same studio. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of them. And then I'm going to click Synchronize. And notice that Photoshop CS2 goes ahead and asks me exactly which settings I want to synchronize. And notice that I have sort of a series of custom options selected. If I just want to go ahead and synchronize all the settings, I would go up here to Everything and just select Everything. So I'm doing all the brightness stuff, all the contrast stuff in this area, the crop as well. And I'll go ahead and click the OK button in order to update all the images. And you'll notice that the thumbnails have all grown. That's because the images are all fitting inside of a tighter crop boundary. Now, at this point, having all the images selected, I can make a few more modifications as well. So, for example, I'll go to this new Curve tab right here. And notice that I have the benefits of the Curves dialog box right here at my disposal as I'm working with a Camera Raw image. And I'm also seeing the histogram in the background, which is something you don't see inside the Curves dialog box. Now, let's say I want to lift a specific color from inside the image and assign that to my brightness curve. I would press the Control key. Notice if I have the Control key down or the Command key on the Mac, as I'm dragging over an area, I see the bouncing ball that's showing me the brightness value. That's exactly under my cursor. If I go ahead and Control click, let's say down here, I will lift the color from that pixel, and I will assign it to this graph here, which allows me to, for example, lighten her hair just a little bit if I want to. I'll brighten this up, so I'm brightening up all the shadows. That's sort of flattening the shadows just a little bit, but it's bringing out some of that color information as well. And I might take down the highlights ever so slightly at this point. And notice as I work here, I'll do a really dramatic change. Did you see all those thumbnails update? So when you see tiny little yellow caution signs, that means that Camera Raw is working on updating the thumbnail or updating the preview in the central portion of the dialog box. As soon as those little caution icons go away, the updates are done. So you can either modify a single image inside this dialog box and then synchronize all the other images to match, or you can modify multiple images all at once.